Kennedy from Orlando, Florida. What are your top 5 wrestlers who were the biggest waste of potential? People that completely ruined their own careers. All right, so that's an important distinction to make because you have people whose careers were ruined by others and by booking, but then you have people who were basically their own worst enemy and couldn't get out of their own way. This is probably closer to a top 10 than it is a top 5. I don't know how I would rank them. I jotted down a bunch of names here. I'm not ranking them necessarily. I will say this, though. Teddy Hart has to be at the top of any list. Teddy Hart is somebody who had a world of potential and should have been much, much bigger than he was. And through no one's fault but his own, he was not. When I think of wasted potential, Teddy Hart is at the top of the list. Another guy, and you may or may not hear this name mentioned, but another guy is Buddy Landel. Nature Boy Buddy Landel. How many Nature Boys have there been? We had Buddy Rogers, right? We had Ric Flair. We had Buddy Landel. I'm sure there were others. What is a Nature Boy exactly? Still haven't answered that question. Buddy Landel, this is a guy who should have had a Hall of Fame career. Dusty Rhodes was going to book him against Flair to win the NWA title, right? The Battle of the Nature Boys, because their matches were doing big business. And the problem is the booze and the drugs, they took over. I think he missed the TV taping that he was booked for and Dusty fired him. I know years later, Jim Cornette, because he's talked about this, he's talked about the Moon River incident years later in Smoky Mountain, and he liked Buddy. But, there was a good Buddy and there was a bad Buddy. And in that one, he was booked in an I Quit match with someone that he didn't like. And so he's trapped in a submission hold. And when the referee holds the microphone to his mouth and asks him, "Do you give up?" he starts singing Moon River, which sounds funny, but Cornette didn't find it very funny and he fired him. But I remember they brought him into the WWF in like the end of 95. I think they brought him in for like a week. He did a bunch of matches, right? He wrestled Ahmed Johnson on an In Your House pay-per-view. I remember that. I want to say it was the night that Jeff Jarrett came back to the company because Jarrett had lost the Intercontinental title to Shawn Michaels in July at In Your House. And then him and Road Dogg, they literally left the building. Like they stormed out. Road Dogg, I think, did it more just in solidarity with him. But Jarrett just was not happy with the booking and he was gone. He was gone for a few months. But he came back at the end of the year, and I think he was there that night, but instead of him wrestling, if I'm remembering this correctly, he brought out Buddy Landel, who of course got killed by Ahmed Johnson. But then he worked a bunch of matches that week for like some of the tapings. He wrestled Bret Hart for the WWF title. So that was the end of 95, and obviously they didn't call him back after that week. I think the last match he ever worked for them was against Triple H. It was on like a Shotgun Saturday Night taping, and it was during the Attitude Era. This was years later. After that, I can't remember a fucking thing that he did. But, as they say, he fumbled. This wasn't Vince McMahon's fault. This wasn't any other person's fault but his own. Buddy fumbled. He fumbled what should have been a Hall of Fame career because he was unreliable and out of control. Matt Bourne is another one. Just watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode they did on him. Matt Bourne was immensely talented. He was also, from the sounds of it, a piece of shit. But he was immensely talented. I mean, Evil Doink, come on, man. That should have been a bigger run than it was. So there was more potential for him to be a bigger star than he was. 2 names I talked about last week. Somebody asked me in the mailbag. Low Key and Austin Aries. Just couldn't seem to get out of their own way. Matt Riddle. We've seen Matt Riddle in the news. Matt Riddle should have been a world heavyweight champion in WWE. The reason he isn't has nothing to do with WWE. Velveteen Dream. Talk about wasted potential. He would have been a world champion as well on the main roster. Tessa Blanchard. Tessa Blanchard should have already headlined a WrestleMania with Charlotte Flair. She should already be in WWE. She may eventually get there yet, but her career stalled out. Not because of anybody but herself. So those are some of the names that I would have on that list. I'm sure we could add others. Green from Morocco. Rank these legendary referees. Earl Hebner, Mike Chioda, Tim White, and Charles Robinson. Those are four of the greats right there that you just named. Tommy Young is another one. I got to throw him in there. Iconic NWA referee. And probably Red Shoes in Japan. Red Shoes Uno. But of those four, I am partial to Earl Hebner at number one because he reffed all the big matches of my wrestling youth. And he took some of the biggest bumps too. Now I see where he also loved the camera and he would put himself in situations where he should have been in the background. I can see why some people really don't like him. There's some people that don't like the cadence of his counts as well. They thought that the way he would count near falls gave away that it wasn't going to be a 3 count. I honestly never really noticed that with him. There are certain referees who had a very weird cadence. Nick Patrick in WCW was one of those people. I never liked the way that he counted. It was just very strange to me. So I just never thought much of him as a referee. But again, so with Earl Hebner, you'll get a mixed opinion. But for me, he's got to be number one. And then I would go Charles Robinson, and then Kyoto, and then Tim White.